So we're in this same mode of looking at a single architecture firm's work and looking at their theory in just kind of one aspect, one thing that they're interested in. And in this case today, we're looking at the firm SANAA, which is primarily was founded by Kazuo Seijima, and also involves very much Rua Nishizawa as well. But Seijima was born in 1956 in Japan. She went to the Japanese Women's University and graduated in 1981. Right after graduation, she went to work for Toyo Ito. Toyo Ito, of course, really amazing, extremely creative Japanese architect, but interestingly, very different in terms of design than Kazuo Seijima. Then after a few years working there, Seijima went out on her own and founded Kazuo Seijima and Associates. And after a short period of time, she had worked with Rua Nishizawa in Toyo Ito's office. He had continued to work in Ito's office, and she kind of stole him at a certain point because she'd enjoyed working with him. He's a good 10 years younger than she. So he went to work for Kazuo Seijima, and then after a few years, they actually changed the name of the firm and incorporated more equally Kazuo Seijima and Rua Nishizawa. But the beginning of the firm was certainly Seijima. So the issue, and you can see it from the beginning of her work, even before it was SANAA, you can clearly see an interest in what I'm going to term minimalism. And this was, in the middle of the 20th century, a very strong movement in art and architecture and other areas as well, music. So in the case of art, it was someone like Agnes Martin, the British artist who basically only worked in white and off-white, and canvases for many years with the most delicate, minor shift in a kind of color of white. So the canvas is all white, but just with very slight shifts in that white. And the notion was that those tiny little minimal moves, if they're made in a context where that's the message, they become very subtle and very powerful. In music, it might have been someone like John Cage, who he wrote a piece that was 24 bars of rests. It was only looking at rests. How does that make music? That's minimalism. In architecture, it was someone like Mies van der Rohe, who he coined the phrase, less is more. That's the kind of dictum of minimalism. Less is more. You don't, in order to create interest or vitality in a piece of music or work of art, you don't layer on lots and lots of stuff. Instead, you pare it back to what is the very leanest, thinnest, most minimal expression you can make. And Mies was famous for saying that he wanted to make a delicate grid or trellis and let life attach itself to that. Let life be the kind of generative thing and not the architecture as a more dominant kind of element. So there's a tradition of this, and Kazuo Seijima grew out of that tradition that she would have been very familiar with in her schooling and her background. This was a strong idea in Japan. And so then as she starts to make her firm, in the early buildings you can definitely see this interest in minimalism. This was a store that she did in downtown Tokyo, and I am proud to say that I was just walking down the street in Tokyo and I saw this building and I thought, holy moly, this is amazing, what a cool building. And so I took photographs of it from the outside, all the details, and just the fact that how in the world do you make a glass wall that is so not there? Usually you have mullions, usually you have a lot more stuff that's required to make a glass wall. But this was just the very most minimal glass wall. And then had a frit in it, a ceramic frit, that was these lines like you see there. And this was, ceramic frit wasn't all that common back then, but it made a kind of milky quality to it. And then when you made an opening in it, how did she do that? There's no structure, there's no frame. She just opened the glass up and she just let you through. So it was just incredibly minimal, very, very sophisticated architecture. It was just on a commercial street in Tokyo amongst lots of other buildings. But as you can see, because it was so minimal, oh my God, it totally stood out. Whereas everybody else was screaming about all their retail message, in this building, it was just silent. And it drew your attention to it because of its minimalism and its silence. It was for this company that makes really very nice, broadly applicable commercial furniture. But it was really meant to make their furniture be the message. So the building is very deferential to all the stuff that's inside. And all the stuff looks exquisite and really quite striking and beautiful because the building supports it. The building is very minimal, very background, but it foregrounds then the contents that are on the inside and does that super effectively. So that was, I didn't know who did that building. I didn't know for 5 years who did that building. Because SANAA was not a thing, and nobody much knew their work. And then when I began to realize who they were, I immediately thought, oh my God, I've seen that building. And the work was powerful, even if you weren't going out there looking for a big name architect. This is a project they did, again, kind of early in their office's career. And again, super minimal. This is the Naoshima ferry terminal. Naoshima is an island off the coast of Japan that is full of arts things, museums and arts parks and things like that. And so you visit it to go see the art, and you have to go by boat. So this is the ferry terminal where you take the boat to get out to Naoshima. So because it's an arts experience, they want to make a really elegant and beautiful ferry terminal. And again, this was one where I went to the ferry terminal, photographed the hell out of it because it was so extraordinary before I really knew it was done by SANAA. But so you're going to see this kind of art on Naoshima, and there's the ferry itself that takes you there. But the terminal is just very, very delicate. It's unbelievable to me that they can get columns that are so tall and thin that hold up this roof. And I did find out later that one of their secrets is they pour concrete inside that tube steel column. So that's part of how they make that steel tube so skinny. And you can see that the rest of the frame of the building, it all just looks like it's made out of toothpicks. It's so minimal and so delicate. And there's a moment here where they need lateral bracing because all of that needs an X brace or something to kind of make it stand up. But they're not going to put an X brace. They sheathe the whole thing in mirrors so that it disappears, so that it's ephemeral, and that X brace is kind of not there. But there it is behind that mirror. There you can see that mirror with the X brace, and there are 2 or 3 of those around it. But otherwise, it's just a very, very simple frame. Look at that roof. Who can make a roof that is that unarticulated? There's no plumbing chases. Everything is taken care of in some other way so that that roof can be as clean as it possibly can be. And then the waiting room is just a glass volume that sits under this big canopy all the way around. Just a few little restrooms and waiting room and cafe, and then these are those braces that are made out of mirror. Otherwise, just very, very simple, minimal kind of expression for that ferry terminal. And it then makes you look at the art and see some of the very minimal expression in the art that has some of those same characteristics to it. So again, this notion of minimalism. They are very, very keen on glass, because glass is a wonderful less is more kind of material. They were then hired to do this museum for the Art Museum in Toledo, Ohio. And they had a tremendous glass collection in that art museum. Toledo is a kind of center for glass production. So they had a historic glass collection, a contemporary glass collection, and they wanted to take all that out of the old art museum and put it in a special pavilion that was dedicated to glass art. So who could be more appropriate for that job than SANAA, who was so interested in glass as this minimal kind of material. And they make this glass pavilion that's in the middle of a beautiful, beautiful, soft green park, and all the reflections in the glass almost make the building go away. It just seems like a part of the green park. I think that's another real asset of minimalism, is when put in the context of nature, it often is not competitive. It actually is very reinforcing of nature. So it's this purely simple rectangular glass pavilion with curved corners, and again, almost miraculous in how little construction there is to make this large building. That would have been the original Toledo Museum of Art. You go across the street on Axis and you come to the glass pavilion set in this park space right there. So pretty much the whole building is glass. And very cleverly, there are some vertical supports, if you're looking for them, that hold up the roof, but the illusion is that it's all just held up by the glass. And when you get a portal, again, it's like we don't need any columns or beams to make an opening. We just need that door frame, and it does the whole job. And it is not supported by anything else around it. It's just the glass there. But this is taking minimalism to an extraordinary level, where really the entire building, inside, outside, is made of transparent material. And the curves in the glass are particularly sumptuous and beautiful and make crazy reflections. And then you can always see then the light coming through the glass as you're looking at it through that exterior wall. All of the glass looks so much more shiny and glimmering because of all the light that the glass lets into that space. So every detail of that, there's a double pane glass wall for thermal reasons there, but rather than putting the two together so that it begins to be thick and it has some mass, instead they separate it so it stays thin and terribly light and delicate. There you see that double paned glass with the space in between it. And always the reflection of the green all the way around. So this is the power of minimalism. It allows the outdoors to be very, very beautiful and prominent. It allows light in an extraordinary way. It can step back and let the contents of the building be more the message than the mass or solidity of the building itself. Now, that doesn't have to be just glass that makes that minimalism. We can see it in the case of this building they did for the Zollverein School of Management and Art, I think Management and Design. And this is in Germany. And it's in an old area that was primarily industrial. That industry is gone. And they began to make a kind of educational center out of that area. And this building was kind of the one new building they built among reuse of a lot of older buildings. And it's really just taking that minimal geometry, the cube, and then taking minimal fenestration, the square within it. And again, doing everything just as lean and simple and clean as possible. Now, very lean, simple, and clean concrete instead of glass. In plan, it's the very most simple square, squares within the square, a few solid pieces, but mostly open plan through the building. They have a extraordinarily high ceiling and a floor that's more the gathering spaces on 2 of the levels, and then some floors that are more office spaces, some floors that are more classroom and studio spaces on the other levels. So it varies in section. There its location in Zollverein, and this was that old industrial park through here, and this is the kind of one new building that they placed in there, and you could say incredibly distinctive for the fact that it is so minimal. It's just a simple concrete box with very simple fenestration in it. And on the inside, the very same thing is true. Very open spaces, these squares that kind of focus your attention on each of the apertures inside. Incredible detailing, glass partitions. In many cases, this is a lecture hall that is just surrounded by glass, and then when you want to make it opaque, you use the curtain to give a little more privacy on the inside. Even the detailing of a kitchen counter here, just the expanded metal, very thin, light material, and then just the plane of stainless steel above it there. The crispness of the concrete, these perfectly square corners, precision everywhere, really reinforcing that notion of minimalism. So I think this is a theory, this is a position about architecture. That architecture is not meant to be in your face, exciting, jazzy, highly articulated. No. Architecture is at its most beautiful and its most elegant and its most serviceable when it steps back, when less is more, and when it has this kind of minimal elegance to it. Okay, one final building by them. This is the new museum in New York on Manhattan. In fact, this is just a few blocks down from the Morphosis building that we saw at Cooper Union. It's maybe 10 blocks on the same street. But again, now just a very minimal building. These kind of stacked boxes made out of a light, thin material. You can barely see sort of fragments of windows, but no articulation really of even fenestration in the building. The bottom floor is just all glass, and you go in directly off the street. And it's got all the more boldness for the fact that it's very, very simple and minimal. It is big open space on the bottom floor, then galleries for the first 3 floors above that, and then an education floor where they have classes and the sort of administrative things up here. And then there is at the very top a multi-purpose room that has a terrace that has beautiful views of Manhattan. But again, just a very simple ceiling plane, a very simple floor plane. They would have designed the bookshelves in the bookstore. And again, very, very minimal materials. A little gallery articulated by just that one plane of glass. This is the cafe. Not much to that, just a bit of furniture. And then as you go up in the building, this is the complete shock to me, the bathroom, which, whoa, that is not minimal. That sort of came in from Mars. But for the most part, the windows have that expanded metal mesh that is the skin of the building over the windows. And then the stairwell, wow, incredibly dumb, minimal stairwell. Just wraps you up through the building. An alternate route down is through this chute, which is a piece of art. And then just big open galleries. And this is the way many contemporary artists want their work to be displayed. They just want nothing around. And the work itself is the message. And these galleries do that really beautifully. And then on the top floor is that multi-purpose space with a big view and a terrace on the outside. And then the whole thing is made, what makes it feel like just these light stacked boxes is this expanded metal skin, which is a kind of just sheer screen on the outside of the building to kind of make it all seem like the same simple, minimal material. So again, almost the opposite of what we were looking at Tom Main, where it's all about the structure and it's all about fabrication. In the case of SANAA, it's not really expressing the structure. Let it be invisible. It's mysterious how everything is held up. It's almost magical how everything is held up. And you're not talking about fabrication. You're talking about just simple, minimal moves. Okay, that's it for today. See you next time.